So this is our vegetable garden. At one point in time, this actually was a vegetable garden. In fact, if I reach over here, see we still have some asparagus growing out of the ground. In our next episode of Reconstructing Spirit Hill, which premieres a week from Sunday, we're gonna go over a lot of homesteading issues that we had when we first bought our property and why there is not a vegetable garden here right now. And to be honest with you, there probably will never be a vegetable garden right here because since then we've changed our plans altogether. But basically, this first garden was a complete disaster. We ended up having to move a camper right in the middle of it. So yeah, it's pretty non-existent. But today, I have some sweet potatoes brewing here. And I say brewing because I didn't really have the right materials to grow the sweet potatoes, but I wanted to because I was walking through our house and we have this potato basket, and I looked in there and I noticed, number one, it was getting low on potatoes, and number two, two of our sweet potatoes were growing in the basket, and I was thinking, well, gee, they want to go forth and multiply, so I should go put them in the ground somewhere. So what I have here is more or less, it's a science experiment of sorts. This is an old water trough from our goats. The bottom of it had rusted out, so it no longer held water, but I thought the ring itself would make a great raised bed to plant something, and the sweet potatoes just happened to be handy. The dirt that I used in here, I actually used clay fill dirt that was brought in to fill in around our house. Nothing actually grows well in fill dirt. In fact, if you looked around our house, there's not even a blade of grass in parts of it, and in other parts there are a few pieces of grass coming up. But the fill dirt in this experiment was more or less just there to kind of help fill things in. Clay isn't necessarily great for potatoes because they need room to expand. But I think I kind of figured out several ways to kind of help figure that problem out. So I went and I dug some fill dirt out of one of our leftover piles, and it was pretty much as I expected. There was some rocks mixed in because it had been moved around, and it was pretty tough to dig into. But I put it in the wheelbarrow and I kind of broke it up and moved out any rocks I could find. The next thing I did was I needed to find some organic material to add to my fill dirt to make it more suitable and have a little more nutrient-rich attributes, because the fill dirt itself is kind of worthless. So the next thing I did was I took my bucket over here, which is just an empty feed bucket, and I went out into the fields and I started scooping up piles of manure wherever I could find it. Some of the manure was nice, old, and really broken down and decomposing. Some of it was a little fresher than I would have wanted, but because I'm using fill dirt, I really needed a lot of nitrogen anyway. So whatever I could find that was kind of going to help break down and work its way into the soil, that's what I was looking for. And so I kind of went through with a shovel, and as I was walking through the field looking for manure that hadn't turned into an ant pile or something else, I discovered that, you know, the horses were down back where our stream bed is. And so I thought, hey, well, maybe I could go back there and find some organic decomposing materials along the stream line and put that in there as well. Because our property is super hilly, all the topsoil on land like this over time has washed down to where those stream beds are. And the stream beds, they'll fill and run like a river after it's rained, but then they'll slowly drop back down. And so you have a lot of sediment that's run off of land all over the place that just kind of turns into muck there along the stream bed. And then on top of that, the horses love to hang out by the stream because they've got water. They walk a few feet out of the woods, they can graze for a little bit, go back in, shade, water, and so they trample everything down and nothing really survives. So you really do have just kind of this muddy muck down there that is filled with all sorts of good things, horse manure, topsoil runoff, and so I just started scooping up some of that stuff, decomposing plants, and I put it all into my bucket and then carried it back up here. And then what I did next was I probably had about 50% of the manure and compost type material that I then mixed in with 50% of the clay fill soil that we had, or fill dirt. And then I kind of mixed that around. I used a fork to kind of break up the manure a little bit. Yeah, speaking of manure, it's a nice piece of it right there. But we'll just stick that in there. So I kind of broke it all up and mixed it together. Having a lot of those organics mixed in with the fill dirt is going to help keep the fill dirt loose, because when you're growing potatoes you need dirt to be loose so they can expand. But I also, one of the things that I did do when I was filling this is I went in and I grabbed, we have a lot of old hay bales, and I love old hay bales. There's so many uses for them. I use them when clearing land. I'll spread them out through the woods and burn off weeds with them. And in this case, what I did was I put some soil down at the bottom of this, then I put some hay on it, then I put some soil, and I put some hay. And the reason why I was doing that is because the hay will continue, the straw will continue to break down. But as it's kind of packed in there with the dirt, it also retains moisture. The manure is going to help break the grass down even more, and I'm basically creating kind of a compost effect right in here where I'm growing my sweet potatoes. The hay is going to retain moisture and put off heat. Additionally, because this is a galvanized steel, as the sun hits it throughout the day, that's going to create heat. All those things are going to help break down the materials that I added to my fill dirt as these potatoes grow. And in theory, like I said, this is a science experiment. Normally you would have a compost pile where you've been composting this for about a year and then you put it all together. What I'm trying to do is take some stuff that's halfway broken down, mix it in with fill dirt, and throw it into a pot and see if I can grow something in it. But in theory, it'll work. That hasn't been proven yet. So it's my theory, and I'm not necessarily the greatest when it comes to growing things. I put some hay across the top to help retain the moisture in here as we kind of water it for the next couple days, and then, you know, as rain hits it, this hay I'm sure will eventually rot off fairly quickly now that it's out in the sun and it's not super thick. There's probably just like a light layer of hay that's been put on top, but you can see it's keeping the soil nice and moist. The hay that's in there, as it breaks down, it's going to help keep the soil loose. A lot of fun things going on in here. A lot of poo, a lot of just organics breaking down, and then we've got our sweet potatoes, which we're growing. So with the sweet potatoes, you don't want to plant them too deep. So what I did with the sweet potatoes is, as I kind of filled this in, I put them on towards the end, put some grass around it, made sure that there was some good mulchy stuff going on directly around the sweet potatoes, and then I lightly covered them in dirt, because you don't want to plant your potatoes too deep. They're not the type of plant that wants to be planted deep. They want to be fairly shallow when you plant them, and then, you know, hopefully they can grow and expand down in my sweet potato muck that I've created here. So we're gonna give it a shot, and we'll do a follow-up video down the road. Either it's going to grow or it isn't, but it was worth a shot. I wanted to see if I could create a planting bed out of some of the waste materials that we had on our homestead and put them back to use. I'm a big fan of recycling, so if there's a way I can do it, I'm gonna try it.